A little reminder, by the time I get this video published, there'll be probably only about 3 hours left of this grandfather rate for Ethereum. So if you want in-depth expert Elliott Wave analysis prepared by Jack Frost and supported by me every Tuesday, you'll find it on our website and you can get it at a decent rate. This grandfather rate's only available for another probably about 3 hours. It ends at 10 a.m. today, Eastern Standard Time. So click on the link below and go over and sign up and get your subscription to Ethereum analysis. Hello everyone, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with your Monday to Friday update for Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP and Solana added in now. Technicals for Bitcoin, it's so boring, it's still within this consolidation. I was thinking about the boring aspect of these markets and, well, although it is really boring and it tests our patience when prices are in these big consolidations, it does offer an opportunity to have a breather. The market has a reset and it sets itself up for the next run. What I do not see is evidence in this downward movement here, to this last low, of strength in downward movement, indicating a start of a new bear market. When Bitcoin ends its strong bullish runs, it usually forms peaked tops, and the movement down off the high is usually pretty sharp and quick. This is choppy and overlapping, and this looks like a three-wave movement as well, so that looks corrective. The first second wave correction in a bear market can be very deep, so that could have been over here, but the next move down from this high to this low, again, this looks like a three-wave structure, so in Elliott Wave terms, that would be a corrective structure. I'm not seeing evidence that Bitcoin is in a new bear market. What I am seeing evidence of is a big time-consuming consolidation, which has now relieved extreme conditions that were evident at the last all-time high. The consolidation still has resistance in the same zone, 71,500 to 73,100, and support in a slightly wider zone, 60,700 to 58,200. Yesterday's downward session is now complete and it has a little push from volume. For the short term, the volume profile is bearish because strongest volume is on recent downward sessions after the last low. But overall, volume is declining as price moves sideways. Because the short-term volume profile is bearish, that tells us we may expect to see another test of lows within this consolidation. While price is within that rectangle pattern, on-balance volume is also within a consolidation. Resistance and support and a new short-term resistance line now has 3 tests, so there's a little bit of technical significance there. ADX is still declining. It's managing to get itself down to a fairly low level. If ADX can reach below 15 and then turn around and move higher and rise from below both DX lines, that would be the strongest signal ADX can give, and whichever DX line is on top at the time that gives that signal will tell us what direction the trend is. If that happens, that'll tell us that the market is in a new trend in a very early stage. The model of stochastics plus support and resistance for a trendless market tells us to expect overall continuation of an upward swing to end about resistance simultaneously with stochastics reaching overbought, but don't expect price to move within a straight line in that swing. Typically within consolidations, markets move in very choppy, overlapping behaviour. The technical situation for Ethereum remains the same as yesterday. Support a little bit above 2,700, resistance at 3,200, and prices moving sideways. Let's see if yesterday's downward session had any strength. It has weaker range and it has weaker volume. So for the very short term, the volume profile for Ethereum remains bearish because since the last low, it's downward sessions which have strongest volume and increasing day on day, whereas upward sessions, some of these little bull runs have declining volume, although this last one did not. But for the short term, I'll read Ethereum's volume profile as bearish. Ethereum has a little range for on-balance volume with the lines contracting, so we are going to get a breakout sooner or later. ADX is slightly increasing today, telling us there's a very short-term downward trend again for Ethereum. But RSI indicated some bullish divergence with price at the last low, and money flow indicated double bullish divergence with price at the last low, although they didn't reach oversold, but they don't always tend to do that within pullbacks. But this short-term bullish divergence at the last low does suggest for Ethereum it may have found a sustainable low already. Moving into Elliott Wave now, I'll give you Elliott Wave analysis for XRP and Solana. For XRP today, someone made the comment that within this movement you can't see it as a 5-wave structure. I disagree. I've checked the structure on the hourly chart. I expect we could have 1 and then a double combination for 2 with a WXY, zigzag X flat, impulse for 3, brief shallow zigzag for 4, and a 5th wave. XRP could be in the early stages of a 3rd wave at multiple degrees to the upside, minor, intermediate and primary. The target remains the same, 29.01. I went over that calculation yesterday. The structure for intermediate 2 is a double combination, WXY. Overall it has a sideways look, and that's exactly how a double combination should look. XRP Technicals at 2 is within a very time-consuming and very boring consolidation. Support about 49 cents, resistance 54 to 55 cents. A couple of days ago we had a test of support at 49 cents with a bit of a bullish long lower wick, but not long enough to be a hammer candlestick pattern. It had a little push from volume, and more recently, since the last low for XRP, it is upward sessions which have strongest volume, although volume is still declining as price moves sideways. For the short term for XRP, I read the volume profile as bullish. XRP has a range for on-balance volume while price is consolidating, and the lines here are converging, so we will get a breakout at some stage, hopefully soon. If it happens prior to price, it may be used as a leading indicator. If it happens with price, it'll be used as a confirmatory tool. ADX is telling us XRP is in a new downward trend in an early stage. This is a fairly bearish look for ADX, but not as bearish as it was back here. So we could see lower lows for XRP. But RSI reaching oversold on the 13th of April suggests that is less likely. Now, if we do see lower lows for XRP, we may see it with some bullish divergence. So XRP could make a lower low and then exhibit bullish divergence between price and RSI. If that happens, I'll have quite a lot of confidence that a low is in place. But it may not happen, and the 13th of April could be in place. This is my Elliott Wave count for Solana. Someone asked in the comments for me to explain to them how I learned Elliott Wave and how long it took. I learned simply by picking up Frost & Preachter's Elliott Wave principle and reading it, and then just practicing on charts. Back in the day, 16 years ago, I was just using charts in Photoshop to put some labels on and trying to figure out how Elliott Wave worked. So that's how I did it. But I always found that Frost & Preachter's book required a little bit of interpretation, wasn't always really as clear as I wanted the rules and guidelines to be. So I wrote my own book, which you can get from my website. There's a bunch of links in the description box. You can get Frost & Preachter's for free at ElliottWaveInternational.com, or you could get mine for $15 US for the ebook. I wrote my book to try and be as clear and explicit as possible, making no assumptions about prior knowledge. So this is for beginners, and if you learn the way I do just by reading and looking at pictures, then this is a pretty good way, I think, to learn Elliott Wave. I've also got a course, but that's a whole other deal. So if you want to learn Elliott Wave, I would recommend the book I wrote. That's why I wrote it, to help people learn Elliott Wave, and to do so with a book that's really, really clear, no prior knowledge required, and hopefully no interpretation. I've chosen the words very, very carefully, especially how the rules are written. And then you just have to practice, and you have to do that for quite a while. It took me at least 6 months of daily practice before I thought I started to have an idea of what I was doing. I recommend when you start practicing, I've got rules and guidelines in my book, and Frost & Preachter's is the same. There's a section in there with rules and guidelines all listed for each structure in a very logical way. As you label a structure, identify what the structure is, and then go to the rules and guidelines and use them like a checklist to make sure all the rules are met, and then go through the guidelines and make sure as many guidelines are met as possible. If you've broken a rule, the wave count's invalidated, discard that labeling and try and find something that meets all the rules. Elliott Wave count for Solana. I see Solana in a 3rd wave at cycle degree. From its inception back down here, I start the Elliott Wave count in May 2020 to this high here. In October 2021, there's a really, really good looking 5-wave impulse. This is almost textbook perfect. 1, zigzag for 2, impulse for 3 is longer than 1. It's 12.887 times the length of 1. Triangle for 4, this is a regular contracting triangle, gives perfect alternation with the zigzag of 2. There's pretty good proportion between 2 and 4 as well, and it's the proportion between waves of the same degree that give an Elliott Wave count what we call the right look. 5 is longer than 3, it's 4.158 times the length of 3, so kind kind of close to the Fibonacci ratio, 4.236, and 3 was kind of ish close to 11.09, so maybe a little bit of Fibonacci in there as well. This bull market lasted just under 1.5 years, and the following bear market lasts just over a year. So they're in really good proportion. So this should be labelled cycle 1 and this should be labelled cycle 2, and it subdivides beautifully as a double zigzag, pretty common Elliott Wave structures. When 2 is complete, then 3 should begin. At 2,887, 3 would reach their Fibonacci ratio, 11.09 times the length of 1. It may only subdivide as an impulse, and so far I have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see the middle of the third wave having passed, despite cycle 3 not yet having moved beyond the end of cycle 1. That's okay, because I expect the fifth wave, primary 5, to end cycle 3 to be the longest, strongest portion of cycle wave 3, ending with vertical upward movement, and I expect primary 5 to take less time than primary wave 3, so I expect it to be that's where you're going to get the most profit. Let's take a look at the daily charts. We're looking at 2 different possible structures for primary wave 4. My main Elliott wave count considers primary 4 an incomplete zigzag, because from this high to this low, this downward movement, you just have to agree it looks really good as a 5 wave impulse. If there is a 5, then that means the correction's not over, because corrections may not subdivide as 5 wave motive structures, so that means this is only a wave A. The question I have with this daily Elliott wave count is minor wave B complete here as a brief shallow zigzag? It certainly could continue higher. I'd label it like this. This is also possible, and so the invalidation point is up here for that reason. B may not move beyond the start of A when A subdivides as a 5 above 209.6906. Alternatively, what if the correction was over here? Will it fit into an Elliott Wave structure? The answer is yes, it will, and it meets all Elliott Wave rules, but it doesn't meet the guideline, and that's what I was trying to explain at the start of when I came into Solana's Elliott Wave analysis. Make sure your Elliott Wave count must meet all of the rules. You can't fudge the rules, or you're allowing your bias to intrude in your analysis. It doesn't have to meet all the guidelines. That's the difference between rules and guidelines. But an Elliott Wave count that fits more guidelines than one that doesn't has a higher probability. So you use the guidelines to rank your Elliott Wave analyses into order of probability from most likely to least likely. And it's always a good idea to have alternate Elliott Wave counts as well. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to see if the correction could be complete. And yes, it could. And it will subdivide as a double combination. Zigzag for W, brief shallow X, flat correction for Y. This is an expanded flat. The problem here is that combinations should be sideways movements with a sideways look, like that rectangle on Bitcoin. That's a big sideways movement. But this isn't sideways. It's got a very obvious counter-trend slope. And the problem is because X is brief and shallow, and within Y, its price extreme is well below the price extreme at the high here of W. So that means that the whole thing has a downward slope. It just looks really wrong. This wave count looks very forced, but I'm not confident that Solana has enough volume to always have good-looking Elliott Wave structures. Sometimes markets with lighter volume will have not very good looking Elliott Wave structures, and you have to be a little bit open-minded and flexible with them. You still got to meet all the rules though. Don't fudge the rules. I always like to consider what if my main wave count's wrong? What if I'm making assumptions? What if I've just got it wrong? It's happened before, it'll happen again. I can't be so arrogant as to think I'm always going to get it right. I'll get it wrong for sure. If I'm wrong, what could be happening? Primary 4 could be complete. Primary 5 could be in its early stages, must subdivide as a 5-wave motive structure. Now I've got 2 targets. I went over these in yesterday's analysis for you. I've just rounded the first one up to a whole number. Let's get into technicals. Solana still moving sideways. Resistance about 168, support about 118. Actually, I'm going to add another resistance line. Resistance about 159 and support about 118. It's moving sideways in this narrow little range. Previous range here, breakout and downward movement, and now it's developed another trading range. We need to see a breakout of this range in order to have confidence for the next direction for price. About these lows, there's a bullish engulfing candlestick pattern here and a bullish piercing pattern here. It is upward volume within recent movement after the last low that has strongest volume for Solana, but it hasn't increased day on day for these 4 sessions up here, which is slight concern for a bullish case. On balance, volume has a pretty decent range, but these lines both have a quite a strong slope, so that reduces the technical significance, but the upper line has many tests, so there is some significance here. ADX is flat today, no clear trend. At the last low, RSI exhibited some bullish divergence, although it didn't reach oversold, so that's an indication that the low may be in for Solana, which would suggest that alternate, less likely Elliott Wave count should actually be seriously considered. That's it from me today with your update. I hope everyone is having a lovely day.